Hello, 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 and welcome back to IVF in Your Pocket, your waiting room companion. In today's episode, I am going to walk you through need to ask questions at every step of the journey. So this is going to be a summary. I'm going to do about top 2 questions for each phase. This is a complement to some of the other episodes in the podcast, like the episode about starting IVF, what no one tells you, and the physical part of IVF and consultation questions to ask. So go back if this episode is of interest to you. I also wanted to talk about something really exciting that I put out that you can find in the show notes. I have created a workshop called the IVF Prep Workshop from Overwhelmed to Confidence. If you are feeling confused, frustrated, discouraged, overwhelmed, this is the workshop for you, whether you're starting or somewhere in the middle of your journey. This workshop is really comprehensive. I walk you through meditations, reflection exercises, tons and tons of tips. It's like a more thorough version of the podcast. So if you like this podcast, I think you're going to really love the workshop. I think you're going to feel equipped and things are going to be much clearer after you go through the workshop. I go through 5 different phases, including developing an emotional toolkit, what to expect with retrievals, what to expect in consultation, how to choose a clinic, what consultation questions to ask, what to think of and kind of have on your mind in terms of embryo development at that phase, and then transfers. And we form mantras along the way. So it really helps build confidence and take a really overwhelming process, the IVF journey, and make it feel very manageable. And I think you'll really like it. So check that out in the show notes. You can find that at PayHip. It's a great complement to this podcast. Okay, so the questions you need to ask, there's so many of them, of course, on the journey, but this is going to really highlight some of the most important questions that tend to help people really get clear about their thoughts and just what they need to be thinking about. The first thing, even before you start IVF, and if you're in the middle of the IVF, this is a time to pause and think about it too. So you might want to grab a pen, a journal, a paper, your phone to think about this really quickly. You can come back to this, of course. It's a good thing to think about along the way. This is a need to ask question of yourself and your partner, which is, why are we doing what we're doing? So why are we choosing this route? So for example, why are we doing IVF versus IUI? So that's the first thing to get clear. Why are we doing this? So a little bit of journaling or reflection about why, why this particular route, not why are you wanting to build your family. So why are you doing donor egg versus IUI versus whatever path you're choosing. And then as a second part to that question, what are we comfortable with if this first option doesn't work out? What's our contingency plan? And even if I'm going to use my own egg, it's good to just think about why. So if you don't have a contingency plan or a plan B, why is that? So you want to reflect on that. That's fine if you know that you don't want to use a surrogate, you're going to use your own eggs, no donor sperm, no donor embryo, or you're I am going to just do 1 round of IVF. It's just good to know going in why you're choosing that, knowing that you can come back later in the journey and choose something different. So you pause this episode or come back to it and really reflect on that. This is something to come back to as an anchor question throughout your journey. Now, you move on to the next step, which is consultation of an RE or clinic if you're lucky enough to be able to choose. Even if you're not, if you're outside of the US and you're in a situation where you have to go with a clinic that's assigned to you, you can think about this in terms of which RE in that clinic, if you have any choice at all. Or if you're just assigned a doctor, either way, the question to them is also, why are we choosing the specific path we're choosing at this moment in time for me and my case? So your doctor, your RE might be saying like, hey, I think you got to do donor egg, and you want to know, why are they telling you that? So why is your RE choosing the path that they're choosing? For what reason? Because oftentimes you can just follow along and not understand the RE's logic, and really they're your guide, and you want to be able to understand their thinking, and a good RE will be able to explain why they're choosing the path within the IV realm and world for you. Okay? A separate side question. So that's one question at consultation. The side question is, how many rounds are we going to need? So that's one of the most important questions. That's true even if you're skipping a retrieval, you're just working with, you're going to be doing a donor egg, or maybe donor sperm and donor egg, or you're going to be using donor embryos. You want to know how many of whatever you're doing it's going to take to get to your desired family. So if you're using donor embryos, fantastic. Your RE is, you want to ask like, how many embryos do we need here to get our desired 3-child family? So again, really important to know, of course, like what, how many children, what your family looks like, how many children you're wanting. Next is retrieval, and this question is really important here. What protocol are we using? If you're going through a retrieval, you have a surrogate donor going through a retrieval, what protocol is the RE using, and why? Why that particular protocol for your case? The next stage is the embryo development stage, which is such a crucial stage in IVF. It's about a 7-day process or so, and it kind of gets skipped over in a lot of the information education out there about IVF. But a question that you have to ask that you're not going to find on ChatGPT, I don't think. You can see. Maybe I'm wrong here, but a question at embryo development, when there are follicles have been retrieved and you're trying to get a blastocyst, an embryo, euploid perhaps, is at what days are we going to find out an update about how our embryos are doing? And then, depending on what happens, asking the doctor, even if it was good, like, hey, how do you think this could be better? Or where did things kind of not go as well? Okay, so maybe you saw like a low fertilization rate. So that would be, you see how many follicles were retrieved, how many were mature that we could use, how many were fertilized, and then of course how many of those after fertilization become a usable blast. Like if you had poor fertilization, you want to know from your doctor, whether you're in the UK or the US, Florida, Virginia, the Middle East, South America, wherever you are listening from, you want to know from the provider, hey, like, what happened here? Like, can we get something better here? Because even if you had a good outcome, you might be able to do something even better next time if you're going to go again through another retrieval. And you just want to be asking all the questions like, hey, if you had a poor fertilization rate or nothing made it to blast, you are entitled to talk to your RE about why they think that happened. Again, they're the guide. So it's really important to get their thinking, even though they don't always come out and tell you what their thinking is. You're entitled to that. And then you're then moving on, and hopefully there's something to transfer. Whenever you get to the transfer phase, again, as I talked about in the previous episodes, you really want to know what transfer tests are out there and how to prepare your uterus, or if you're using a surrogate, how the surrogate can prepare their uterus. And then the other question for transfer is, do you want to use, are you a candidate for a medicated or non-medicated cycle? So if you have the option to do a quote natural cycle, unquote, that's something that you would want to know. Okay, so you transferred and now you're in the 2-week wait. Nerve-wracking. The question to ask is, what day is beta draw? Okay, what day is the beta draw? What day are you going to find out the results of if you're pregnant or not? And then if you're not pregnant, then it's like, well, now what? So that brings us back to the top of the episode, which is your plan, your contingency plan. What are you comfortable with? Are you comfortable with 10 retrieval rounds? And again, this can change. This is a flexible writing reflection exercise that you continue to do throughout the journey. So after that 2-week wait, if things haven't gone well, you have that question about now what to your care team, not just with yourself and if you have a partner, but to your care team, like what are they suggesting? And then finally, if you have made it to the phase where you're in early pregnancy, you want to know when is graduation from your clinic and how many monitoring visits or at that point early pregnancy ultrasounds will there be. Okay, that was a lot compacted into this episode. Feel free to repeat this episode. I went really fast. Those were kind of some of the highlights of what to ask when, both yourself and your care team. Sometimes I talk about so many questions and I wanted to give an episode and give you a chance to really think about the top questions from each stage in the IVF process. I'm really hoping that these episodes are making this process a little bit more clear and easy. And don't forget to check out my amazing new IVF prep workshop. Okay, that concludes our episode for today. Thank you so much for listening. I have an amazing guest coming on, a doctor who I'm really excited about for our next 2 episodes that are going to be answering more of your questions. If you want to find out more about me, you can do that in the show notes. If you're in California and want to work with me, you can find me on my website, alexandragarystock.com. As always, I love hearing questions, so send me those. I love answering questions. You can find me at alexandrapsychotherapy@gmail.com. And remember, until next time, you are not alone.